Hebrews 13, 17. The more I dwell on this verse, the more, I see more stuff. Have confidence in your leaders. This is that whole idea of confident leaders. I have experienced and I observe that confidence often trumps competence in terms of organizational leadership. Because a person is competent, it does not necessarily mean that people will want to follow. My observation, my experience is people follow confident leaders. And part of the reason is because that leader's confidence inspires confidence in a follower. In the context of what the writer of this letter is in, I think he's talking about primarily about the church. How do I have confidence in the leaders of my church? This is interesting. Pardon me. From an organizational point of view, if I'm going to have confidence in my leaders, that confidence will come from a couple of different places, potentially. First of all, my experience with the leader leads me to believe that I can trust them. I have somehow observed their leadership, or I have been personally affected by their leadership, and that this trust gives me confidence in them. Second thing is, other people have told me about his reliability and about their confidence in him, and so I have the same level of confidence. I don't think it works very well for somebody to say, well, just have confidence. It doesn't work that way for me. When I have confidence, it's because the person in question has earned it. So how does that fit into Hebrews chapter 13? Well, I think it's really and truly in an organizational sense. Have confidence in your leaders and submit to their authority. Okay, these leaders have been given authority, and if it's in the church, in the first century, they did not hold elections for elders. We have democratized that concept in all the churches I've ever been in, and the congregation votes on them. I don't think that's a sin. I do think it's not quite biblical. In the first century, leaders in the church, elders and deacons, were designated. I don't see that happening, and I honestly, I'm not even sure I want that to happen in the church that I'm in now and the other churches that I've been in. But in the first century, these leaders were designated, usually by the establishing pastor, the leader of leaders. We're supposed to submit to their authority. I mean, this authority has been granted them. Where I think our situation differs is I'm the book of Acts is not full of examples. I mean, there's only a few examples in the book of Acts where elders were appointed by the Apostle Paul. But when they were appointed, they were given authority. And it's important to understand what the authority was for. Okay. Some people would think authority in this organizational sense was for the purpose of ruling. But that's not what the writer says here. He says, submit to their authority because they keep watch over you as those who must give an account. To me, this is one of the bullet points of the job description for a biblical elder. They're to watch over the church. Keep watch over. You mean this in a John Calvin kind of sense, where he punishes people who step out of line? Well, I suppose you could, but I don't think that's what this is about. It's about these leaders keeping watch over us for our good. Not for our pleasure, not for our happiness, but for our good, as those who must give an account. To whom? Well, obviously to God. But don't you think they would have to give account to the congregation in some way or another? Just a thought. And then the writer goes on, do this so that their work will be a joy, not a burden, for that would be of no benefit to you. So I guess what I'm getting from that is, when you have confidence in your leaders and you submit to their authority, knowing that they have to give an account for their stewardship here, you can do that grudgingly. You can do that with what organizational development people have a term for, when it's called malicious compliance. It's where you comply, but you do it in such a way that the person who made you comply will regret they ever did it. A lot of backbiting and backstabbing, a lot of emotionally damaging kinds of things, and dysfunctional. And the writer says, he didn't use these words, but I'm phrasing it. Don't do that. Do this so that their work will be a joy. If you've ever been in a management position of anything, when people do their work with sincerity, at least, and diligence, the work of the manager is a pleasure. When I've been in a managerial position, I loved it when the people under my authority, I don't think of myself as very authoritative, and the people under me as under my authority. But when I was in that position, my job was easy because the people in the organization understood the expectation of their work, and they did it wholeheartedly. It was the best time of my professional life. So I know what it's like to be in a position of authority and for it to be a joy, not a burden, the writer says, for that would be of no benefit to you. Okay, let's think this through. Sorry, I don't want to, I put on the wrong shirt this morning, and one of my friends who, clicks on and views this as a visual disorder, and the stripes on the shirt will drive her, she'll get nauseous. So, okay, all right, back to the text. which is for, if you do this, it says, well, if you don't do this, if you become a burden, that would be no benefit to you. Okay. Don't get it. Yeah, I do. Here's what I think comes down to. People don't like this in our culture, but God has a hierarchy of authority, not value, but authority. So someone who has been placed in authority over me is no more valuable than I am. It's not a matter of value. It's just positional. So the people in authority over me in the church are in a position that has been designated by God's design. And although we, I know of people who believe the gift of apostleship is still operational today. I think there are a few people who do some of the things that the apostles did. I don't think of them as apostles. They didn't walk with Jesus in the flesh, in person, for 3.5 years. So, but anyone who's in a position of authority in a church has been placed there by people, but ahead of them and above them is the sovereignty of God. Now we're into deep, deep waters, because I have known people who probably shouldn't have been given the authority. They were not emotionally nor spiritually mature enough to carry that burden of authority. So there's a lot of room here, a lot of margin for, I don't know if I'd call it mistakes, but mistakes. Well, even in those cases, if a person has been placed in authority over me in the church, I have a responsibility to treat them with respect, at least. And part of that would be if I observe behaviors and hear words that don't fit with the character design that the Holy Spirit made clear in the book of Timothy, I think I have to speak up, but I think I have to do that in a respectful way. And we're dealing not with, in this text, we're not dealing with modern churchianity and modern ecclesiology. We're dealing with first century designation of leaders. It says there's no benefit to you if you don't treat your leaders with this confident regard. Have you ever been in a situation where you just didn't like the person that was leading you and you made it hard for them to lead you? And did it do you any good? Depends on how political you are, I suppose. But in examples that I have from my own life, which are very few, didn't work out good for anybody in the end. So what's the point here? I think the point is 2 points. First of all, when authority has been designated, observe it as authority. Second thing is, in our culture, we often are the ones who designate authorities. Be wise, thoughtful, sensitive to the Holy Spirit and His leadership and His guidance as you select these leaders. Well, All right, I'll do better. Well, I'll try next time on So Care with Stevie.